Welcome to We the People's News. Today we're going to find out CNN's
Yeah,
story.
Jeffrey, go ahead.
Let's see what they call Antifa, a communist
The theme here
organization.
is, I'm Donald Trump and I'll protect you from the scary black people. Antifa is widely perceived as an African-American organization, and this is just part of the same story of LeBron James and Don Lemon and Maxine Waters and the NFL players and the UCLA basketball players. This is about black versus white. This is about Donald Trump's appeal to racism, and it just happens all the time, and we never say it, or we don't say it enough for what it is, but that's what's going on.
Well, what do you think?
So this is black versus white. Now, does that make any sense? I would show you Antifa. I'll show you what they're about. And it has nothing to do with black versus white. It has to do with communism versus freedom. And that's what you're going to learn in this video. And I hope you enjoy.
Oh, can I? Well, shut the fuck up, Search Guard Trip, dumb bitch.
Just go that way. Because I told you to.
Really?
Don't hurt
Yeah,
me.
brother.
Just go.
Yeah, you little
please.
white little
Go.
fucker.
Here we have Antifa blocking and directing traffic. They have no authority to do this. Absolutely none. They are not the law. Telling people to go that way. Oh, you white motherfucker. Well, if anybody's racial, I would have to say it's Antifa. You don't see anybody out there in the inner cities, in the ghettos, the black people, as CNN says, directing traffic, telling them to go one way or another, calling them black motherfuckers. So whose war is this?
Yeah, you're a fucking little whitey, aren't you? The First Amendment, get the fuck down the road.
Now, these people want to overthrow our government, take away our Constitution, and put in social justice, but are so quick to say First Amendment, because that would be gone. They don't want, they're stepping on these people's rights, claiming to use their rights to do it. Just like later you will see that they claim attacking fellow citizens is in all reality self-defense in their mind, because they labeled them something. When we shall continue.
Please just keep going the direction.
Just please turn right,
Please
for
go
Christ's
the
sake.
direction I asked
For
you to
Jesus
go.
Christ's sake, just turn
Please,
right.
you're
Will ya?
blocking traffic and they're getting this to
we're
you.
blocking traffic.
You can
Liberal logic. You're blocking traffic when in reality, as the driver of the car says, you're blocking traffic. And why would they have the right to do it, but they want them to move because they're, quote, blocking traffic? This makes no sense. This is ridiculous, and this is the globalist soldiers on our streets trying to take away our sovereignty, freedom, and Constitution. Don't think it isn't.
please just
Now
keep
you're gonna have to
going.
wait, because you got cars coming.
Oh.
Bro, what are we doing here? Oh, you're from South Carolina. You are a little white supremacist. North Carolina, huh?
Right.
I'm a white supremacist because I'm white. Are you kidding me?
Oh, and there it is. If you don't do what we say or say what we do, you're a white supremacist. If you don't agree with us just because the color of your skin is white, oh, wait, you're from North Carolina? Really? That makes you a white supremacist? I mean, they call people white supremacists that do not agree with them, and they think that justifies their actions and disrespect and treatment of others. That is what they believe.
Go back to North Carolina where you came from. We don't need your KKK in Portland, Oregon.
You can go there.
KKK from North Carolina. Someone shut the fuck up so I can speak.
Who raised these people? Well, I'd like to meet their parents. Who taught them to be so disrespectful to others? Where is this coming from? That is not American behavior. And it never will be.
Ron.
Well, look, I don't disagree, but I would frame it more broadly. I mean, I think, Trump basically has portrayed himself from the beginning as kind of the last line of defense for his supporters against all the forces that he suggests are trying to take America away from them. And sometimes it is coastal elites, like his attack on Google this morning.
What they fail to tell you, this is how CNN does it. Oh, Donald Trump attacks Google. Google spent $1.5 billion helping Hillary Clinton that was not reported as campaign contributions. They put all their, I have an article about it on WeThePeoplesNews.com. I wrote about it before Fox News and Breitbart because I found an email showing they were setting up an organization, the head of Google, to the Hillary Clinton campaign during the election, that they were setting up an organization to help her. Why would Google and Trump be allies then? They tried not to get him elected and they hate him.
And sometimes, often, it is minority leaders, like all the attacks that Jeffrey mentioned. The key, though, is, and what he said to the evangelical leaders really fits into this, I think, is that he is presenting himself, in effect, as a wartime president for Red America. Only the war is largely against Blue America. I mean,
well, I thought it was a black and white war. I mean, make up your mind, CNN. And now it's a blue and red war. Well, I say Antifa is very red. Not in the sense we know it, but in the sense of communism. Maybe that's what we're fighting back against. And they're the ones out there starting the war, not us. Your side has said harass people. Your side has sent people into restaurants to bug people. We don't do that. Conservatives don't do that. We try to live and let live. But you don't allow us, and you are pushing us into a corner.
we've had presidents who've been accused of slighting voters outside of their base before. Trump, I think, really is the first one who actively kind of tries to demonize the voters and the parts of the country outside of his base as a way of consolidating and mobilizing his own supporters. A division is essential. It is integral to his entire strategy. And, of course, the price on that is it puts enormous pressure on the less partisan piece of the Republican coalition, mostly white-collar suburbanites, and that is where they face the greatest risk this fall among the very voters who we were talking about before in the last segment, who kind of look at what's happening and say, this is just too much chaos for me. I want some more checks and balances.
Go ahead, Joe.
And there you have it. They created enough chaos to scare voters. They just admitted what they did because they're the ones that sent the people out on the streets to attack people like the Patriot Prayer Group who are just having a rally for freedom. And next thing you know, Antifa has a counter rally because they show up and they start attacking people, throwing feces on them, macing them, throwing urine on them, hitting people with locks, throwing objects, attacking police, attacking porters. But Antifa, oh, let's feel sorry for them, right, CNN?
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
A civilian army? What's Obama talking about? Yeah, you see, people forget the things he said in the past. He built that with our money to all different charities that are supposed to be nonpartisan, yet his own charity is anything but nonpartisan. Hillary's charity, all their charities, there's so many of them. Social justice is one of the big key words. Any charity like that, you look at their agenda and they are not partisan. They are against a candidate, and it's illegal. But nothing is done. Nothing. Now, he's building this civilian army. Maybe that's why they think they're the authority to go out there and direct traffic and tell other citizens what to do. Are they part of Obama's civilian army? Because he's still out here building people.
I don't know, Ron. I'm thinking it's just black people and brown people. I think that's what it's about. And, you know, yours is a very sophisticated analysis, but I think it's just as ugly as it can be. And
Washington Journal continues.
Welcome back, and we're going to speak now with Mark Bray about the Antifa movement. He joins us from Dartmouth College, and he wrote a book called Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
A pleasure.
So why'd you write a book on the movement, and what is your relationship to it?
Sure. So I'm a longtime activist and historian. I was involved in Occupy Wall Street in New York City back in 2011, and I've been involved in a variety of social justice movements.
There's the word, social justice movement. Social justice is a code word for socialism. This is a professor that teaches. He wrote the book on Antifa. So let's listen to what he's got to say. And in this interview, there were Republicans and Democrats that called him, and some were really on the point.
And I started to realize that really with the resurgence of the alt-right, in the Trump era, when there's this concern about fascism, concern about white supremacist politics, that there's actually...
Now, first he labels, he thinks there's this danger of alt-right, all these labels that they put on people. And he's going to set this up as, the flag-waving Patriot American, because that's who they're attacking. That's who the Patriot Repair Group is. They're the ones that fought the Nazis and defeated them. But because Mark Bray thinks those that don't agree with him are got to be white supremacists and got to be Nazis, when they're average day Americans that believe in America and believe in our system and our freedoms, not socialism, not Marxism, what this is all about. So we'll just let him continue.
Relatively little written about post-war anti-fascism, that being after World War II. Most people think of course, the World War II. They think of the socialists that fought against Hitler and Mussolini in the 20s and 30s.
See, there it was. The socialists admitted that's what they are. And socialism is communism. There's no difference. Don't think there's a difference in it. And yeah, I tell you what, the communist Russia sure helped defeat the Nazis. If you look at history, they lost a lot more than us in that battle. And it's unbelievable that these socialists, which is it clashes against the Constitution of the United States. And this is what is being defended by CNN as what should be right, because social justice is all through the UN and the globalists, if you look.
But know a lot less about the kind of second half of the story, when self-defense groups were formed in Britain and Germany among immigrants and leftists and punks to defend themselves against a neo-Nazi skinhead wave that was kind of unleashed in response to waves of migration in that era. And
so what did he just say? In Britain? Who? The Nazis attacked. Who helped defeat the Nazis? Immigrants, leftists, you hear that? Leftists, socialists, anarchists, all formed groups in these countries. Socialist. Britain wasn't socialist. That is why they have the problems they have now, because of these socialists in their country that have taken over their politics, their media, just like America. This is the problem we have. This problem is as bad as the Islam terrorist problem, because they're from within.
How it moved over to the United States with the development of anti-racist action, and then, continued through to today in the movement we're seeing right now.
So this is an admitted socialist movement that is modern in the United States. And CNN doesn't tell you that. They tell you it's a black versus white thing. So think about that and never listen to CNN again.
And some people, including the president, Donald Trump, have associated Antifa with violent acts. Do you think that association is warranted?
Well, what people miss is that the vast majority of what anti-fascists do is nonviolent. They monitor the far right, they track them across various social media platforms, figure out who they're organizing with, find out where their events are going to be held, make phone calls to the owners of hotels or VFWs to get them to cancel the event. They spread popular education. So there's a variety of tactics that are used that do not involve any sort of confrontation, but of course the media focuses on the spectacle. But the other part of it is, though, that the anti-fascism is an argument for self-defense collectively against the proven historical perils of white supremacy and fascism, so that they don't shy away from asserting their right and the legitimacy of defending themselves.
Now, did you catch that? He danced around the violence. We do this non-violent stuff. We educate people. We harass people. We track them. We stalk them because we think, because we label them as Nazis, or because they don't go about what we do now. Well, want to talk about historical past. Socialism has killed more than the Nazis. The Nazis were squelched. Socialism is still alive and well, and it is everywhere it has been tried. in history. Every single time, it does nothing but bring human misery. Ask those in Venezuela right now. Look what's happening in France. Why? Because they squeeze people to the point that they riot, and that gives the excuse to come in and take over. That's what they're doing to us. They are breaking down our law and order, the character of our country, kneeling at our flag, bashing our national anthem, killing all our traditions, saying everything, all our traditions are racist, Thanksgiving, you name it. I mean, what did I see on candy canes now? We're taken from a school because it's in the shape of a J. It's a cane. Oh, these people. But this is what they do. See, we have nothing to unify behind. All of us as Americans, we will be defeated. Division is defeat. Here we have not swastika wearing Americans, but flag, headband wearing American people that believe in freedom in the United States of America and our Constitution. That's what they believe in. And they are jumping the barriers and coming to attack them. They didn't throw a punch. It's Antifa. Antifa's starting the violence. They are the violent people. They're in mass. This is just unbelievable. Attacking fellow citizens on the streets, and CNN wants to defend them. Think about that. Communist News Network.
Get the fuck out of here, motherfucker! Get out! Get the fuck out! Get the fuck out!
My fellow Americans, I implore you, you're going to have to pick a side. It's going to be forced upon you. What side do you want to be on? The mask-wearing socialists that are trying to take away our freedom? Or the side that is standing up for freedom and getting attacked and needs help? We need to show them, if we put enough numbers out there, they will back down because they are college kids, indoctrinated. These people, they are paid to do this. They are not doing it because they really believe in it. And if they are, we need to revamp our education system in America because that's where they learn this. Do you know why CNN won't show you that? It's because it will anger you to see your fellow Americans being treated that way. Just like they won't show you true coverage, which we have on YouTube channel, what happens in Dearborn, Michigan to American citizens by Muslims. They get attacked just like this. Everybody you need to quit watching the mainstream media and come to us, quote, fake media sites that will show you the truth. Because that's what this is. This is the truth. CNN will not show you them attacking our fellow citizens. Instead, they will defend them. Our media is sold out to the globalists. Please quit watching it.
Get the fuck out of here, you fucking dumbass motherfucker! Get the fuck out of here! Move Get the fuck out! Fuck you! What the fuck you are? You fucking stupid! Joey! Fuck out of here! Fuck out of here! Now walk out! You're not welcome! Cross out!
This is mob rule. That's what socialism is. Do you see how many it takes for them two patriots to chase them away? They keep hitting them, throwing stuff, telling them to get the fuck out of here. Who are they to tell them that? You have the right to travel. You have the right to walk wherever you want in America. And when other citizens hinder that and stop your rights, they are the ones in the wrong. Yet our media defends them and bashes the groups that are standing up against them, like the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys, I just said, they are not an extremist group because they are standing up for our rights and our Constitution. Don't listen to CNN. They are censoring people. They're censoring speech. They selectively edit the news to control your mind, and it works on many Americans.
Dressed in black and ready to fight, this is what the world sees of the Antifa.
Here we have a puff piece of Antifa by CNN, and I want you to see how they describe this group.
Oh, Nazis can't! There is no national Antifa group. It is mostly made up of people who are far left of center, who make it their mission to battle fascists, racists, and alt-right extremists.
Their mission to battle Nazis, racists, and alt-right extremists, who they label that. If you're anti-illegal immigration, anti-abortion, you are a white supremacist. Plain and simple in their eyes. You don't have rights to stand up or believe in what you believe in. You can't be an American or you are a Nazi to them. It's that plain and simple.
Behind the masks are people from all walks of life, artists, moms, ordinary Americans, as well as anarchists. But fighting is only part of what the Antifa does.
Here CNN will try to justify their violence on fellow Americans. This is a shame. They call themselves a news organization. They are an activist organization for communism. That's what they are.
So everybody had a good day at school today?
These Antifa members battle white supremacists using cameras and computers, outing neo-Nazis on social media in a process called doxing.
Yo, Tubbs! Tubbs, fat boy!
Jessica and Alex capture white supremacist rallies on video, then post identities of the participants online, outing them to their friends and co-workers. What is doxing?
It's ascertaining an individual's identity and personal information, and then engineering social consequences for that person for being out in the streets as a white supremacist and making threats against minority communities.
Now, first off, you have a right to privacy in America, so they are violating that. But they are doing what they think, what they believe, what they label as Nazis. And they're just regular, everyday American citizens that love America. The Patriot Prayer Group is not Nazis. Go look them up. Go look up what they stand for. Prayer and freedom. Hence the name. This is because this is a war that is put against freedom on us. And there are people, there was a state trooper that was just fired, or just suspended, I'm sorry, because he put up somewhat would be conservative viewpoints. It's absolutely amazing. They are getting people fired that are Americans because they put pressure on places, and it just doesn't make any sense. Oh, they're a Nazi because they label them one. You show me these Nazi rallies. You show me where these swastika signs are flying. Please. They're going after people flying American flags.
Not get to be a Nazi on the weekend. If you're a Nazi on Saturday and you're marching with a torch, you're a Nazi all week long.
So you already know who he is. What's the point of taking this video?
His friends.
His friends.
Who have you doxed?
The most obviously high-profile one was Mr. Corey Klicko.
Corey Klicko was a member of the neo-Nazi political party called the National Socialist Movement. That is, until Jessica outed him in this story she posted online.
What happened immediately afterwards was he dismantled his chapter, he stopped organizing, he canceled his events, and he publicly disavowed Nazism. Said he disavowed hate.
Klicko couldn't be reached for comment for this story. We meet a lot of Antifa who are kind of on the fringes of society. But you're really not.
No.
You have a job, middle management, right?
Yeah.
Notice how CNN tries to paint her, but any war machine has middle management, has people that believe in their cause and do much harm through propaganda. I mean, there was another sheriff, I think up near Portland or Washington, that was fired for wearing she was a woman. She had a off duty somewhere. She had a PB shirt on, or PG, Proud Girl shirt on, and someone got a picture of it, and she was fired because of it. Shouldn't she have the right to express how she feels?
You have a family?
Yes.
How do you go from being suburban mom to Nazi hunter?
I have a skill. I think I can leverage it to do this kind of work for my community. And it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
What we have here is a self-appointed Nazi hunter, quote unquote. We just have to take her word for it. She has no authority, no commission from anybody. She does not work for law enforcement. And most of us agree Nazism is bad. Now, the very few that don't hide their heads, but when you're going after people that are waving an American flag, I think you had the flags mixed up or some kind of history mixed up or someone scrambled your mind, because that's the people that defeated Nazism. And that's who you're after in America. The ones that stand for liberty and freedom. And you're disguising this with the word of Nazi and making them synonymous. Anybody that loves freedom, and we're not going to allow you to do it.
This means Nazi go home. You got a problem with my sign.
I got a problem with you calling me a bitch.
I wonder why you got a problem with my sign.
I got a problem with you calling me a bitch, not your sign.
Doxing by both the alt-right and the Antifa is becoming more prevalent than the violence. But it's the violence that gets most of the attention.
Coming up and punching that man, no matter who or what he's saying, should get the attention. If you want to use information war and digital, that's fine. And you want to say your side, that's fine. But you cannot walk up and punch a man like that. That's an American citizen. I mean, if we're going to allow this, then our side, when we start doing it, guess what they do? But we don't walk up and punch. It's all been self-defense. That's all it's been. And yet, we're the ones who labeled the violent ones. CNN has no problem labeling the Proud Boys violent, or the Young Turds, or any of them. But they want to defend this group that is socialist at its core and communist at its core.
I hung back to smoke a cigarette.
Alex has traveled by bus to a dozen protests across the country since Donald Trump's inauguration. He was at the deadly protest in Charlottesville last year and says he was not far behind Heather Heyer, the young woman who was hit by a car and killed.
I run up there and it looks like a war zone. People bleeding, screaming. They couldn't get ambulances through. It was a mess.
You say they're coming to these events looking for a fight, that they're armed and they're ready.
Yeah.
So by giving it back to them, aren't you kind of playing into exactly what they're looking for?
The only other option is allowing them to attack the community. I'm not going to stand back and do that.
Why didn't the CNN reporter ask her, where are they attacking the community? Could you please explain that? Because I haven't seen any Klan rallies, Nazi rallies, attacking anybody in the United States of America. To be honest with you, I haven't seen any of it. I don't know what they're talking about. Anybody out there show me, please? I mean, if they wouldn't have showed up to Charlottesville, there probably wouldn't have been any violence. And that's the truth of the matter.
33-year-old Cameron is what you might call a reluctant Antifa member. He's a musician and an athletic trainer, and he represents what he says are a lot of Antifa protesters who aren't quite on board with all of the violence. If you took violence out of the mix, wouldn't you still have the same platform?
Absolutely.
So, but why the need to fight?
For me personally, I can't speak for everyone and you know, raises a flag for anti-fascist action, but for me personally, violence is only to be used as an absolute last resort. I try to sway people around me. I try to convince them, hey, don't just walk up and clock somebody on the street. That's not exactly great for optics. It's definitely an internal issue, and it's one that we're still fighting.
John Carrico believes violence is a tool that is necessary to Antifa.
Violence is a tool necessary to Antifa. So they cannot have an adult conversation. They have to have violence. And that is what's necessary to a revolution.
He's an anarchist who considers himself an activist, often starting his day at the food pantry.
Fritos? You want some Fritos? There you go.
He also says he is running for the U.S. Senate in Tennessee.
I am more, radical and than that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm not going to run from that. I'm just going to, because I'm just using a platform. Move things further to the left.
Last summer, Carrico was arrested for fighting at a white supremacist gathering. He was charged with disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor. But the man he fought was so badly injured, he had to be evacuated by medical helicopter.
The victim of his violence was hurt so bad he had to be flown in a medical helicopter out of there, and the man was just charged with disorderly conduct. Does that make any sense? Is that the America we know and love? This man should be in prison. He maimed another fellow citizen on our streets because he thinks he's a Nazi. And that's not enough. That's slander. That's accusations. They got no proof of their claims, yet they use it as an excuse to beat up fellow citizens. It's time to wake up, America.
To be evacuated by medical helicopter. How did you land at anarchy?
I had been a big Obama supporter. He kind of let me down, so I was like, well, maybe the government isn't effective at doing these things.
John's father is a staunch Trump supporter who is appalled by his son's Antifa activities.
I'm not sure what Antifa or Antifa, or how you pronounce it, really is. I'm not sure that they're left. I mean, some people might lump them in with the supremacist group as far as, as their methodology.
Would you?
Their methodology, I sure would.
Look, this poor father. Oh my goodness. Maybe he should, that's unbelievable to me. I'm sorry, that one's kind of got me speechless. This poor father.
I think his methodology is just totally wrong. Well, who are you going to convince? The people in the middle? Well, no. Not really.
Right, and I don't think that what we're going for is public opinion, to be honest. I mean, I think what we're going for is the ability to stop. With the anti-fascist movement, it's about stopping fascism, whether or not it's popular to stop fascism.
Are they not the fascist group? Blocking traffic, violence, all of it to get their point across? Isn't that fascism in itself? If you don't agree with them, you're a Nazi? I mean, my God, man, it doesn't make any sense. They are illogical, and it is all about the overthrow of the United States of America, and that's what this is about.
98% of the people, or 99% of the people in this country are totally anti-fascist. You don't need an Antifa to stop fascism.
You think the threat's smaller?
I think the threat is almost non-existent.
And that is what most Americans believe. There's not a fascist problem in America. This is not about fascism. It's about the violent overthrow of our Constitution and our way of life and our republic. To turn this country into a social justice, socialism, into communism. That's what this is about.
But activists say their radical tactics are working.
I believe that we are shutting them down continually, making them afraid to organize because they don't want to be doxxed or they don't want to lose their jobs.
I say we live in a very sad age in America when someone could actually lose their job because a group like Antifa that's mass beating up citizens, pepper spraying them, throwing pizzas on them, and is communism at the core, can say you're a Nazi and you lose your job. What has happened to our country?
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Even alt-right leader Richard Spencer, who organized many of the rallies that became violent, admits that Antifa's tactics have worked.
I really hate to say this, and I definitely hesitate to say this, but Antifa is Antifa is winning to the extent that they are willing to go further than anyone else.
You know, it's not hard to go further when you can beat someone up, send them out send them to the hospital in a helicopter and get charged disorderly conduct. I mean, this is not being looked at by the CNN and all the media downplays them and acts like they're good people. No wonder they're winning. But this is bigger than people know. This is huge. It's globalism trying to take the United States of America. It's out there in black and white. You can find it. We've done articles at We the People's News about it. This new migrant thing, they want to make migration a human right where anybody can go anywhere. There's no borders. And if you speak out against it, you will be re-educated. It's in black and white. Look at our article in We the People's News.
Case in point, a white supremacist rally planned last year in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, shut down the town. Businesses boarded up, fearing the worst. The group canceled at the last minute. A major victory for the Antifa.
You notice they don't name the group, they don't name the protest, they don't name any facts. They just want you to take their word for it. And Antifa said it was a white supremacist organization. I have seen no Nazi flags anywhere in patriot rallies. Nowhere. So where is their proof that they're Nazis and communists? They label, CNN has labeled, allowed people to come on and label everybody that voted for Trump as white supremacists. This is what they're doing. They're starting a war in America. And people better take notice.
What happened? The Nazis canceled apparently the Murfreesboro rally. One of the organizers just put it on his Twitter.
Do you know why?
There's too many of us and not enough of them.
So doesn't this kind of prove the point that this can be accomplished without violence?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a diversity of tactics to be used. I think that we can try different things and different things work.
But this worked. The peaceful protests worked.
And how is the group funded? And how do members of the organization interact or communicate with one another? Is it entirely via social media?
It isn't one specific group. It's more of an activity or a politics of social revolutionism applied to fighting the far right among communists, anarchists, and socialists, and a variety of radical leftists.
Did you hear all those names he mentioned? You notice he didn't say American citizen or Americans. You see, these people are fighting against us. It's admitted right there. It's admitted who they are. And they are using violence against us and getting away with it on the streets of America. People, it is time to wake up to the truth. They say it. You just got to pay attention.
They sometimes coordinate. For example, there's a Torch network where a number of North American anti-fascist groups coordinate and share resources and information, but generally they're autonomous and they don't usually have a lot of money, so the kind of George Soros conspiracy theory is entirely inapplicable in this case, but I'm sure that they develop their own sources of funds for materials and so forth.
Yeah.
Don't you just love that? George Soros conspiracy theory. Look how they label everything, man, and they make a joke and light of it. George Soros completely funds these people, and it's easy to prove. It is CNN and all that. This Mark Bray. This is a danger to America. This is what a terrorist looks like. A very dangerous terrorist.
And the first time I'd heard of this group was in relation to the Charlottesville protests. But you mentioned it's been around a lot longer than that in the U.S. Help us understand that.
Sure. So anti-fascism as a movement has existed globally for a century. But in the U.S., of course, we can look in the 20s and 30s to conflicts within Italian-American communities, within German-American communities, Jewish self-defense organizations formed in response to Nazi presence in the United States. But in its modern incarnation, we can look at really the late 1980s into the 90s with the formation of anti-racist action, who essentially developed in response to neo-Nazi skinhead attacks on punk venues and alternative scenes, but grew into a broader network with hundreds of chapters around the country that defended reproductive rights, that did a wide variety of organizing against the far right, and of course, more broadly speaking, opposition to the KKK and the black liberation struggle's need for organizing against the far right was very prominent in the 50s, 60s, and onward, and dates back for centuries.
At a campaign rally in Phoenix this past week, I'm sure as you all know, President Trump called out Antifa for protesting his rallies. The president made this remark after someone in the crowd interrupted his speech.
How did he get in here? He's supposed to be with a few people outside. How about all week they're talking about the massive crowds that are going to be outside? Where are they? Well, it's hot out. It is hot. I think it's too warm. You know, they show up in the helmets and the black masks, and they've got clubs and they've got everything. Antifa!
You go, Donald Trump. Hey, aren't you glad we didn't elect Hillary? Because by now, we would all be slaves.
How do you respond to that?
I mean, at this point, Donald Trump has lost any sense of credibility on making much of a comment on anything, in my opinion. Certainly, he's trying to discredit a certain faction of the anti-racist movement, which has asserted the legitimacy of collective self-defense.
There it is, the code word, collective self-defense. That is our right to be violent against other American citizens that don't believe like us. It is fascism in its purest form. These people are not only arrogant, they are teaching our children. So think about that. College education sure means something different, but it's all the way in elementary school. Anarchist Firestorm Bookstore in Asheville, North Carolina, for an elementary school, had a book fair. And these are anarchists and Antifa. They are in our schools, people. They're teaching our children. You wonder why there's so many college kids at these things? They are teaching us. They get extra credit. I went to the Murfreesboro rally, and SIU was given extra credit for them to go protest. And there was, like Donald Trump said, a few of them. That's it. The American line to see Donald Trump was much, much, much bigger. It was miles long. There was a handful of Antifa there. And they were very good because they were outnumbered.
We've seen historically the threat that fascism and Nazism can pose.
Yet you completely ignore the record of socialism and communism in history, which is very evil. And what has worked for everybody is the Constitution of the United States and its freedom. And yet you are attacking that.
We've seen that sometimes, as the caller said, putting our bodies in between fascists and vulnerable members of our society is important. We've seen with the tragic death of Heather Heyer what they'll resort to. And I think that, really what we're talking about is not that complicated. We're talking about the threat of neo-Nazis and white supremacists. We've seen what they can do, and we need to be prepared for that.
I contend if Antifa wouldn't have shown up to North Carolina, that Heather would still be alive. And they take one incident and label all of America and anybody that votes for Trump or anybody that believes in American values, and they label them as Nazis because of one incident in North Carolina. They are absolutely ridiculous, and they ignore the bloody history of communism and socialism in the world that has killed many. They think they stand on a high moral ground when in all reality they do not.
We're talking with Mark Bray. We're taking your calls as well. The line for Republicans is 202-748-8001. Democrats call 202-748-8000. Independents call 202-748-8002. We're taking your tweets as well. Here's one. Steve writes, Mr. Bray is exactly what Antifa should be, unflappable, not given to provocation. Let's go to Mel, who's calling from Frewsburg, New York, on the line for Independents. Good morning.
As I listen to the discussion, I can't help but think of the English social critic Malcolm Muggeridge, who said that fascism and communism are the same show.
What? A man with sense? Of course they're the same.
Therefore, fascism is on the left. It's really not a right-wing movement because fascism controls people. And notice how the anti-fascists also want to control.
And they will use any means necessary to do it, including violence and overthrowing our country, because the ends justifies the means in Marxism.
They will introduce themselves even in a violent way, as was on display in Berkeley, California. And you see this movement trying to impugn the right when the neo-Nazis are actually left-wing.
Someone give that man a prize. Wow, they're actually left-wing. And that is the truth. National Socialist Party. There's that keyword socialist also. Don't let these people fool you. Do not let them fool you. They are after our freedoms in the United States of America because it stands in the way of globalism. Our freedoms, our constitutional rights cannot coexist with globalism who wants to control.
National Socialist Party. That's left-wing. So this use of words is something that the public needs to be very careful on in discerning how language is being used, because the anti-fascists are left-wing and the fascism is left-wing as well. The anti-fascists are those on the right who support the Constitution.
Amen. The Constitution grants rights to all, regardless of color or belief or religion. It grants it to all, not just who Antifa thinks should have rights. This man hits the nail on the head.
Who want the free market, who believe in equal justice for all, not equal outcomes.
Oh, there's the trick, equal outcomes. That is an impossibility. Somebody with an 80 IQ will never be a rocket scientist no matter what opportunities you give him. It is just the way it is, and it's just natural. They are anti-nature also.
Thank you for that. Well, I can tell you as a historian of fascism that there is no credible historian who believes that fascism is a left-wing ideology. The main debate is whether fascism is a right-wing ideology or neither left nor right. We can see historically that although early fascists made claims to being the true socialists and argued that for a national socialism or national syndicalism that could essentially use socialist principles in the interest of the nation, socialists are consistently anti-national, are consistently in favor of class struggle rather than national unification. And when when fascists have gained power, they have jettisoned and completely discarded any trappings of socialism or egalitarianism. They are fundamentally different, and it's really an attempt by the right wing to really mar the historical record, to confuse people. You know, you can make the argument that certainly right-wing libertarianism is different from fascism, but fascism is by no means a left-wing mode of thought.
This man's full of fucking bullshit. I mean, all you have to do is read history. And because he thinks he's a professor and he's used to lecturing kids, he thinks it works on grown adults.
And here's Cynthia calling from New York, New York. Cynthia is a Democrat.
Hi. Yeah, I became a Democrat to support Bernie Sanders, and I hung around after because you have to be a Democrat to vote in the primaries, which are the only game in town in New York. But aside from that, since we're talking about Antifa, when I was in New York in the 80s, we had big skinhead movement, and I went to burn a flag in Washington Square Park on July the 4th, the year that they were having the controversy in Texas over the communists burning the flag.
Here we get a witness from the Democrat side, a flag burner, something that we wrap our coffins in when our soldiers come back from being killed for fighting for your freedoms. And anybody that burns that flag, I wish would wrap themselves in it first. Because if you allow this anti-fascism movement in America, you will no longer have those rights those good men and women died for. The pompousness of these people is just unbelievable.
Let's go now to Keith calling from Oldsmar, Florida. Keith is an independent. Good morning.
Yes, I have a comment or two, one for C-SPAN and one for your guest. Yes, I would agree with you, Mr. Bray, that the neo-Nazis are racist and all that. But the left wing, in their historical perspective, such as Russia, killed as many Jews as Germany did during World War II. It just took them a longer period of time. Stalin was very anti-Jewish, very racist in his country. So leftists have no moral ground, high ground, on whatever you say.
Here's someone that actually knows a little bit of history, and he's an independent, and they are chasing the independents away from their party into the Trump organization because most people can see who the true hate and fascists are. That's what socialism and communism is.
So another thing is, during the campaign for the presidency of this election cycle, that would be Trump versus Hillary, the Democrats put people in Trump's crowd to cause a disturbance that's directly out of the fascist handbook from the 20s and 30s when Hitler took power.
This is an issue we've also written about on We the People's News and have Veritas's undercover video that shows that they sent people there to cause violence, which in all reality violates the Domestic Terrorist Act. It's all in the article for you to read, but the media won't show you this. The media looks the other way on Hillary's sins in the Democratic Party.
So the leftists and the rightists have no moral high ground, and that will include you in your book.
So a couple things to address. First, I am very clearly, in all my writings, anti-Stalinist. I make no efforts to defend Stalin. Number two, the question of whether or not no platforming a fascist group is therefore a fascist action. Certainly it is an illiberal action. It differs from the sort of classical liberal notion of solving social problems through the alleged free market of ideas. But to say that all illiberal politics are essentially the same through the kind of mode of extremism that is very popular is to essentially normalize the center and equate ISIS with anarchists, which is really ahistorical and lacking in any sort of content. The notion that what defines fascism is disrupting speeches is really missing the point of fascism as an authoritarian, violent, hierarchical doctrine that has killed millions of people. And so
Now, when they talk about stopping conservatives from speaking, like Ben Shapiro and others, and that is very much fascism. You don't allow anybody else to speak but what your idea, that is fascism. It's just that simple.
I think that disrupting a fascist event does not in any way mean that you're a fascist. It simply means that you're not going to go by the liberal playbook for defeating fascism, which we've seen fail in the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
And we should establish a definition. What is fascism in the way that you describe it?
Sure. Well, fascism is notoriously difficult to define because fascists have adopted and discarded ideas more readily than probably any other ideology,
And there is the rub. Shouldn't fascism, I mean, if it's all over America, shouldn't it be so easy to spot? It's hard to define. Of course it is. We got to take your word for the definition, right? It's who you say is fascist. You are fascist, Mark Bray, and you are a danger to the United States of America and its freedom. You should be locked up as a terrorist.
Really grows out of the prioritization of the nation or the race over everything else in a perceived social Darwinian struggle for survival. It entails a glorification of violence, masculinity, and cult of personality.
So loving your country is wrong. Being masculine is wrong. What? Really? What is wrong with this guy? Because he's not masculine is wrong? I mean, he isn't a very masculine man. That's for sure. And so that means it's wrong. And so is loving your nation. What are we supposed to love? Socialism?
And really focuses on class collaboration and unifying the working class and the upper class in the interests of the nation, and in that way differs fundamentally from left politics, which tend to promote class struggle and the interests of the working class. But I will point out that anti-fascists organize against the far right more broadly, not just against textbook fascists.
And what do they label as far right? Anybody that is anti-immigrant, anti-abortion, and stands up for America, its Constitution, and its freedom. Those are fascists in their mind. I say those are the ones that defeated the fascists, and they owe gratitude to them. But instead they're...
All right, let's go to Lewis, who's calling from Pennsauken, New Jersey, on the line for Republicans. Good morning.
Good morning. Sir, your organization mirrors the Nazis when Hitler was gaining power, the brown shirts. You guys show up at political rallies. You intimidate people. You beat people up. You disrupt meetings.
Notice the flag. Communism. Russia. The sickle. Red. No American flags. All black. Red flags. This is not an American movement. It has nothing to do with freedom, and we need to shut it down like the cancer it is.
You know, where to get off? I mean, I was an anti-Trump guy. I showed up at some of those, and I seen your guys spit on children, pepper spray women, attack people from behind and run away, and you guys are wearing the brown shirts or a mask. I mean, where do you get off? You guys are the fascists. You're against free speech. If they don't agree with you, you beat them up. Thank you, sir.
Oh, when the truth is exposed of what they are. And that's exactly what they are and exactly what they do. And here's a man brave enough to say it. Look at, okay, well, here comes the excuses.
Okay, well, so first of all, I am not a member of any Antifa group, and Antifa is not a single group. Second, also to point out once again that disrupting a far-right event does not therefore mean you're far-right. Historically, we can see how anti-fascists have used a variety of tactics to disrupt fascist meetings. In the 20s and 30s, they would infiltrate events and sing and have singing protests over the speaker. There's a variety of tactics to do this, and really, fascism entails in illiberal politics, just like socialism or anarchism, but that does not mean they're the same. There are very clear political differences, and to reduce politics to tactics is really ahistorical and apolitical.
No, you're a communist asshole. That's what you are, trying to spread your disease in our country. And we have had enough of your disease.
Rather than looking at an action, let's look at why it's carried out and who it's carried out against.
So the man that went to the hospital in the helicopter deserved to go to the hospital in the helicopter. It's who it's against, right? It's who you label bad. You can attack then and call it self-defense. You are a communist shrill in America. You are spreading communism and you need to be shut down. It is actually still illegal in America to be a communist, but we do not enforce our laws. We need to enforce our laws and keep law and order in America instead of this chaos, anarchy, socialist takeover.
Let's hear from Bob, who's calling from Tahlequah, Ohio, or Oklahoma, forgive me. He's a Democrat. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning to you. It's a good subject that you're covering. The name of the town is Tahlequah.
All right, thank you for that correction.
Yeah, and it's the Cherokee capital. The Cherokee tribe is the largest Native American tribe left in the country. Just wanted to mention that. We're located between Tulsa and Fayetteville in the beautiful hills of northeastern Oklahoma. And I want to say today I appreciate you, Mr. Anti-fascist. Yeah, and let's define anti-fascism in the modern sense. In the current sense of the word, you would have to be opposed to prohibition on cannabis if you're anti-fascist, and opposed to the Jim Crow culture that come along with keeping the American farmer down and keeping the blacks and the hippies from having their weed. And now, in the modern sense, to keep everyone from having their homegrown medicine. So let's speak to that issue if you're truly anti-fascist.
Yeah, I can assure you that anti-fascists are against the criminalization of marijuana. Yeah.
So this caller will sell out his country to make marijuana legal. There are many people that are for the legalization of marijuana. It isn't an anti-fascist. It's a society issue, and it has nothing to do with this issue of anti-fascism and their violence. Maybe they should smoke more pot. Maybe they wouldn't be so violent.
I can assure you that pretty confidently. Yeah.
Let's talk with Tom, calling from Euless, Texas, on the line for Republicans. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I just want to say Antifa is nothing but a violent, America-hating communist terrorist cell.
And the truth will set you free. That's what they are. He hit the nail right on the head. That's what they are.
Infested with nothing but violent cockroaches and vermin, and every single cockroach and vermin in Antifa, they've got to be exterminated.
I do not agree with exterminating fellow citizens, but I do agree with exterminating this ideology that is taking root in America. And the worst part is it's being promoted by our colleges and media, our schools. And that's why we have so many youngsters out here in this screaming in people's faces, yelling at people, disrespecting fellow citizens. This is what's being taught. And that ideology needs to be exterminated. Plain and simple.
Okay, let's...
I'm not going to comment on that one.
Yeah, let's go to
move on.
Jesse, who's calling from New Albany, Indiana, on the line for Independence. Good morning, Jesse.
Yeah, I just wanted to call it. This gentleman, I'm going to tell you, if I sent my child to Dartmouth to receive an education and this gentleman were to be the one to educate them, I would be really upset that I wasted all that tuition.
The problem is it's just not Dartmouth. We have a few up about the socialist takeover of America. They actually teach it in schools. We have a video of them teaching it in school. We have other stuff from the textbook, bashing what they call North American, you might as well call it white culture, and that we are no longer a melting pot. We are now a tossed salad, that everybody should be able to keep their culture. That's going to ever work. No, people used to immigrate here and become Americans, and the American culture has brought freedom and greatness to the world. When there's a natural disaster, who's the first to respond? It's the American culture. And if the American culture is so bad, why is everybody trying to get here? It makes no sense.
He has no idea what fascism is, has no clue. He sat there just a while ago and said, well, instead of looking at the act of violence, you need to look at who the act's perpetrated against and why. Well, look, fascism is really simple. It's not a difficult concept. You have a group in power, and they use violence to push their agenda. And that's exactly what Antifa does.
That man is 100% right. And we have to stop this ideology in America before it overtakes our freedom and Constitution.
That's not hard. And if you read Orwell's 1984, and Orwell was a socialist, but he recognized the inherent problems in a proletarian society, and you ought to have your guests explain how a proletarian society would work with fascism and how it works with socialism and communism, and see if he can explain the difference there. I think he'd have a difficult time.
We don't have a perfect country. We have issues, but we have ways to fix those issues like we have in the past. We have the closest thing to a perfect country that's ever been in this world. And these people, just like Barack Hussein Obama, want to fundamentally change the United States of America. And what that means is taking away our freedoms and our Constitution, which have granted, capitalism has brought 1 billion people out of poverty. I know CNN won't tell you that. C-SPAN won't tell you that, but it is the truth. And they want to wreck all that good work. Make America great again, people.
He's ridiculous. I'm sure his book's ridiculous, and I'd be really upset if I spent money to send my child to Dartmouth to listen to him.
Okay, well, first of all, what you're describing as fascism, where a group rules society and imposes their rule with force, is essentially what the state does. The state, regardless of which state, with police forces, with prisons, with military. So if you're
here he goes misleading people, because in America, citizens have constitutional rights, and we authorize people to enforce those rights. It is completely different than citizens blocking traffic, going out there, attacking American citizens for no reason, because they label them something.
Against that type of rule, you may well be an anarchist. You should consider that. The second part is in terms of the difference between fascist control and sort of a Soviet socialist control. Once again, I am not a Stalinist, neither was George Orwell, and his critique was against an authoritarian society, which is what I'm against and many anti-fascists are against. And So fascism cannot simply be reduced to state control. It has a very specific historical context, having much to do with the immediate aftermath of World War I, with the response of society to a perceived quote-unquote decadence in response to the growth of bourgeois capitalism. It's very historically situated, and you can't reduce it simply to the control of a specific group over a state, which is what states are.
Yeah, the difference between capitalism and socialism is one is you get things by your own merit, not given to you. You have to work for them, and it's the only system that works. Because if you get things and don't have to work for it, who's going to ever work? It's just stupid and illogical, and somehow they are tricking our teenagers because professors are telling them this in schools like him. And there are many of them. There is an estimated, Dr. Jordan Peterson, who is a professor, say that 90% are Marxist professors in our schools, and is the biggest problem we face.
And lastly, let's hear from Cynthia calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on the line for Democrats. Good morning, Cynthia.
Good morning. Thank you for having this discussion. I think it's very relevant to what's going on in the United States right now. I'm totally a supporter of resistance to the alt-right. I think that their designs on America are a threat to our liberty. However, I must say I saw an interview this week in a park between an Antifa women leader and a white supremacist male. And the male was polite and the female was rude and said violence was justified. Now, I understand this does not represent the movement, but it does harm to the movement of resistance.
The resistance, that's the same term you've heard Hillary say, Obama, the politicians on the left. So they are in bed with this. Now, resistance is a code word for communism. That's another one of them words, like social justice, the collective. That's a code word. That's you got to see the keywords, and that's what it is. This is communism, trying to take over the United States and their freedom. Let's not let it happen, people.
To fascism in America when you have someone advocating violence like this woman was. And I just wanted to mention that we have to repeatedly say this is a nonviolent, I like your term, self-defense for the country or self-defense for the movement.
See, she's mentioned self-defense, but he said that was a reason for their violence and the justification. It's self-defense. He excused the violence with it. She is confused even in her own.
Should be self-defense, and as in any self-defense situation, you cannot throw the first rock. You cannot initiate violence. You can only protect yourself.
And that is exactly what the Proud Boys are about. In other groups, the militias, the patriot groups, that's what we're about. We don't attack anybody. They attack us and we defend ourselves, and then we get called violent. But you have the right to self-defense in America. See, that's another right they're trying to take away with their propaganda in the media and propaganda by this guy writing books. It's all propaganda. It's garbage.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I mean, the anti-fascist argument, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, is understanding self-defense in an immediate sense and also in a preemptive sense.
So he's saying they can use violence as a preemptive strike for self-defense against fellow citizens that are wearing American flags and wave American flags while they carry flags from communism. Think about that. This guy is twisted. This is what the media does. CNN is lost, or they are doing this on purpose. That's the only explanation. They are behind this. It's a globalist movement to take away America's Constitution. Many have fought and died for that Constitution. It just may be our turn next.
Looking back in history and seeing by the time World War II started, it was already too late for many people, and realizing that the most effective way to stop the advance of fascism is when it's small, when we can see, for example, that Mussolini's initial fascist nucleus had only 100 members at first, and being able to stop its advance at that point. And doing so, as we can see, is dangerous, and people need to be prepared for that, and also really attuned to the potential dangers of what this represents.
He just told us how to stop him. Let's stop these people before they get too big. If they cancer, we have to cut it out. We need to kill this ideology. Parents need to call schools and find out what they're teaching. Get involved.
Mark Bray is a historian of human rights, terrorism, and political radicalism in modern Europe. He's currently a lecturer at Dartmouth College, and his book is Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
I apologize about how long this video is, but this is what is going on in the United States of America right now. And this is the truth. This isn't, I showed you in their own words. CNN, the media, you cannot trust them. They are sold out to the globalists who want they want what stands in the globalist way is the Constitution of the United States and our freedoms. They cannot have that because they can't have free people when you're enslaving them. The ideals that America is evil when we have brought so much good to the world and the idea of freedom, where else are you freeing them in the world? Do we want what's in Africa? Tribalism? That's what they push us to by dividing us. They want us to be tribalism so we eat each other up so they can come through with their genius plan to save America because they purposely made it fail. Americans need to wake up. This is a global war going on. We are soon to be poised against the UN because we are standing up against their migration policy, which will put us at odds with them, with a handful of countries that have now followed us because we stood up against it. That makes it a human right to migrate wherever you want, to become a citizen. You're automatically a citizen. It's just outrageous. We'll be doing an article on it. We have put out a video on it. You need to look at it. God bless, and please share and talk about this with your fellow Americans.